Hi, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Bree. Today's video, we're going to go through all of the honorable mentions that didn't make my favorites list for 2023, but were so close they just got beat out by a couple. So my favorites list is going to be 12 books. So I thought for honorable mentions, I will go with 12 books as well, because when I was looking at my shelves, it kind of fit that way perfectly. So these are not all the books I have liked in 2023, but these are the ones that really have stuck with me, even if they weren't the top books of the year. So I have 12 different books to talk to you about. Some are part of series, some are standalones, and most of them are actually probably backlist books. So you may have already heard of these titles, but for me, they were new favorites this year. So yes, without further ado, let's get into it. So first one I want to talk to you about is a series, and I have read the first 3 in that series, and I believe there are 7 or 8 out by now. That is the Murderbot series by Martha Wells. So first is All Systems Red, then we have Artificial Condition, and then we have Rogue Protocol. So I just finished Rogue Protocol very recently, and I hope to get to the 4th one before the end of the year, but I don't know if I will. So for now, we're going to just talk about this series in the first 3 because that is what I've read. So All Systems Red was something I picked up because people said it was kind of a fun kind of adventure story and easy to get into. So I picked it up because I wanted to expand my reading taste in sci-fi this year, and this one was just such a good one to pick up. So if you don't know, this is about a sec unit who is basically a robot that has to protect humans, and it's hacked its own system, and it calls itself Murderbot, and it just keeps having to save humans even though all it wants to do is just watch its soap operas and not do that, and in turn it gets sucked into a big conspiracy thing, figuring out what's going on. This one kicks off just kind of with a bang, so it's a very actiony one, and that's what I really liked about it. It's not too technical. The sci-fi elements are there, but it feels easy to understand, easy to drop into this world. It's really a simple kind of world, and each time you get a new book, you get a little bit more in this world and understanding how it works. But I really like Murderbot as a character. I think I'm a very character-driven reader, so connecting with Murderbot the way I did, I think really propelled me into loving this series. And Artificial Condition is my favorite because there is a friendship in here between Murderbot and another AI, and just that friendship is something I really love. I love friendships and found family and stuff in books, so it was going to be a win for me. The thing that I love about the series is its humor and its action, because I do like action in a book, but I think when you balance it with humor is where it really gets me. While it is a runner-up for favorite of the year and it didn't quite make it, I do feel like it's on my list of favorite series and favorite sci-fi series because I obviously don't have a lot on my plate. I think the other sci-fi series I read was the Monk and Robot book by Becky Chambers, and that's by far my favorite so far, but this is a close second, so I'm really happy I expanded my horizons in sci-fi a little bit and was able to find a series that's a winner for me. So next we have a cozy mystery that really snuck its way into my heart, and that is Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jessie Q. Sutanto. I had read Dial A for Aunties the year previous or the year before that and really loved it, but this is just a different vibe to that one. It does have humor and things like that, which is present in Dial A for Aunties, and it's a little bit ridiculous, but I will say I think it falls way more into the cozy mystery genre than the, like, I guess, humor ridiculous kind of mysteries. I don't know how you would categorize those. So this is following Vera Wong, and she ends up stumbling upon a body in her tea shop, and she decides to take it on and become an investigator. And Vera Wong can be kind of an interesting character to follow in the beginning. She has a lot of opinions about people. She can be hard to get along with. But I think as the story progresses, I just really loved seeing her relationship to other people and just like seeing more sides of her and why she is the way she is. And I really liked it. I think the found family elements are really what pulled me in. While it is a mystery, I think it very much focuses on the character dynamics and the people in Vera's life and how she is very lonely, and actually finding these people has helped her in a lot of ways. And just seeing Vera's like character from beginning to end and how she can start off kind of annoying but in the end is very endearing, and I think that's what really pulled me in for this. I am not a huge cozy mystery reader, and so to find a one-off cozy that I really enjoyed was really fun for me. I just appreciate how Jessie Q. Sutanto creates characters and how she has this like found family and banter between characters, and so yeah, I really liked it. I loved Vera Wong. She's probably one of my favorite like characters that I'll remember from all these books. She just stands out as a very prominent character in my mind for 2023. So next we have a book that I don't actually own, but that is Lone Women by Victor LaValle. This I read in October and I fell in love with it. I had a feeling I was going to like Victor LaValle based on just things I've heard, and I'm so glad I picked this one up, and it really has stuck with me in my mind as one of my favorite kinds of horrors. In this, we're basically following a woman who is leaving her hometown for a reason. We don't really understand why, but we know that she's leaving in a rush and her family house is on fire, and she has a suitcase that she's very protective of, and then she's going to Montana and trying to make a homestead and make this land her own and go out on her own. And there's a lot of conversations around being a Black woman in this time period. There's a lot of conversations about like this land and how it's been stolen from Native people, and there's conversations about just like being in a harsh climate and trying to like make your way and make the most of like kind of a bad situation. There's friendships in here. There's so much that Victor LaValle packed into this book. That was what really amazed me about it. Well, it starts off as being kind of a journey story of her going from her house to Montana. By the end, we are in such a different place than when we started, and it's just so cool to see like the whole progression. Because you get to know our main character Adelaide so well, you just really get to like see all sides of her. And I think what I appreciate too is that she's not a one-dimensional character. She has so many sides to her, and you can see decisions she makes that aren't the best, but you can also see where she's coming from so many times. So she's just a very real person, and that's what I really appreciate about this book, and how much he just packs so many kind of different things. It's part thriller, part horror. Like the horror really goes there, but then for a lot of the book, it also just kind of feels like a horror. There's like a mystery with this family that is kind of disappeared and what's going on with them. And then there's a mystery of her trunk. And I just think that he had a lot of moving parts that I think he weaved together so well to make a very compelling story. And I just didn't want it to end. And by the end, I just knew it was going to be a favorite horror. So that's Lone Woman. It didn't quite make the favorites, but it is so close, and it's a book I think about constantly. In a completely other direction, this is a book that I picked up kind of on a whim. I've gotten really into fantasy and romance type stories, but I would say I've gotten into comedic or lighthearted fantasy romance. So for this, that is The Mysterious Society of Lady Scoundrels by India Holton. This one was something that kind of took me by surprise. I thought I would like it, but it's bonkers. It's very ridiculous and over the top, and I guess that's my thing, because I did not question a thing. I just rolled with it. There's flying houses, there's pirates, and there's like magic for these houses, but magic is like very loosely there. Like, don't question the magic system too much because it's not really understandable. There's a whole series where there's witches and there's Secret Service people, so it just gets wild and crazy, but it just took me in right from the beginning. It's the humor that really brought it in for me. I really liked the main couple in here. We have a lady thief, and she is kind of confronted by this guy, and he's like, hey, I'm here to kill you. And she was like, haha, no thanks. And then they kind of have to go on a wild goose chase, and he's trying to take her back to this person who wants her, and it's gonna kidnap and kill her, and she's just like kind of going along with it but not, and it's just a really funny pretense. And I love the way all the characters act, because it's very prim and proper. Like, you know, how you take your tea is very important, and you're going to be scrutinized if you take your tea a different way. But at the same time, they're like stealing from each other. You know, they're like crashing their houses into each other. And so it's a very fun, just like silly, fun time. And that's what I loved about this. And I do think there's a little bit of a steamy scene, if I remember correctly. There was like one, but to me too, it didn't go over the top. And I'm someone who I think I prefer a little bit less of that in my stories. So it just hit me at the right time. The audiobook was fantastic. I loved hearing the narrator and how she gets the humor to come across, because I think that is really important. If the humor isn't really for you, maybe hearing it audio might like help a little bit, but for me, it was fantastic. It was perfect. It was just one of those fun, good times that you just need sometimes. So fantasy romance was definitely a category I had not delved into very much. I have a lot of fantasy books that have a lot of romance elements into it, but I've never really read just like fantasy romance. And if you have any more suggestions for books like this, I would really appreciate it, because I am running already out of all the fantasy romance that I had of this kind. So always looking for more now because I found it's something I can really like. Next, we have a book that I also don't own, but has become my favorite since reading it, and that is Changing All-Stars by Nanakwame Adebranya. And this was something I picked up just because I was looking at the 2023 Goodreads list, and this one really caught my eye. And it had been one that I've kind of heard about, but wasn't too sure because it was sci-fi, and I thought, hey, I wanted to expand my sci-fi mind. Just preferences, I don't know what I'm trying to say, this year. And so I picked it up, and I'm so happy I did because it was such a good book. This has got a lot of commentary on the prison system in the US, and in this we're in a future world where the US system now has escalated to being one that is very reminiscent of like gladiators. So people who are in prison can either stay in prison and have horrible conditions, or they can sign up to be part of these games where they have to kill each other to the death, and after so many games they are freed. And so we're following Thurwar and Stax, and Thurwar is very close to being freed and Stax is right behind her. So it's mainly a story about the prison system and critiquing the prison system, and there's a lot of reflections of history of the US that's really going on. A lot of critiques about that, lots of conversations about if this was a game and viewing this and how it became like a sport. And so you're getting like people that are watching it and why they love it and why they're so involved in it. You're getting the people who created the games and who profit from the games. And then you have like protesters who are very against it. And so I think it really looks at all sides of the story, and it talks a lot about too like what it means to have your autonomy taken away, because additionally, on top of being in these games, Thurwar and Stax and all the other players are constantly being recorded. Their whole lives are being recorded. So when they're in the games, that's recorded. And then they have like a live stream, essentially, of everything they do after that. And they're kind of out in like an open area, but they have these like wristbands that keep them where they are. And they have to like talk between each other. And like all that drama is like shown on the big screen for people. And I think the thing that really got me was just how many different sides he gives you to look at and to critique this system. And while it kind of hits the nose on the head really well, like if you're someone who knows a lot about the system, it might come off as very in your face about the prison system. But at the same time, I think it was so important to do. And I think that it's a way to reach people that may not know anything about the system and really kind of puts it in your face and like makes you think about it. So I really, really liked it. I think the writing style was perfect for the kind of story it was trying to tell. The ending, while at first wasn't my favorite, I think I've really grown to appreciate how it ended. And also, I listened to it on audiobook for the most part, and the full cast narration was perfectly done. I think it really lended itself to the story because you're getting so many perspectives. To have more than one narrator really, really helped to the story. So overall, I think it combines something that I really like, which is real world critiques within a fantasy or sci-fi setting. I've really learned from horror this year that something I like is when my horror has a bit of a like real world implication, so a lot of historical events and kind of turning them on their head. And in this case, I like that it's taking something in the real world now and putting it in the future, but critiquing the system and making you look at it in a different light. And I think looking at it from so many different angles and so many different arguments for why people have why the system is the way it is now is very impactful and very powerful, and I would highly recommend it. So that is definitely a runner-up. While it wasn't, I would say, my top tier books, it was just close enough to be there, so that is why it's in the honorable mentions. So the next one I have is a series, and I have been searching for this kind of series ever since reading the Andrea Penrose Rexford and Sloane series. I've been searching for another historical mystery series that I could love, and that is until I found The Bangalore Detectives Club by Harini Nagendra. This is set in Bangalore, India in the 1920s. And we're following our main character, Kaveri, and she is married to Ramu, who is a doctor. And she is kind of just a housewife and stuff. And she ends up stumbling upon a mystery that she just can't let go. It has to do with a boy that she's very close to and feels kinship towards, and then also some people that she knows. So she feels very obligated to check it out and figure out what's going on. And then we have the second one, which is Murder Under a Red Moon. And the thing I love about this is it has very great female friendships in here. I don't know why the series is called Kaveri and Ramu, because while Ramu, her husband, is a part of it and he does support her along the way, and I like their relationship. It's very wholesome and supportive of each other. It's mainly about Kaveri and her female friendships. So I'm not really sure why it's called Kaveri Ramu, but that being said, it was just one that really had the found family elements that I love so much. It had the coziness. The Rexford and Sloane series, while the mysteries don't always have to be the most fantastic mysteries, I love the characters, and that's what I got from this. I just fell in love with the characters and the setting, and the way food is described in here, oh my gosh, it just makes me want to eat anything that they put in here because the imagery is so beautiful. The setting itself is so well described. So she's actually from Bangalore, and so this just, you can feel the love of her hometown, and I just really, really loved the found family and the wholesome parts of this. It's a very, feels like cozy mystery, but I prefer a kind of cozy mystery in a historical setting. So that's why I think I like historical mysteries so much, because they are a little bit lighter. The stakes are a little bit lower, especially in a series. You kind of know everybody is going to be okay in the end, but you also have an interesting mystery. So loved it, liked the mysteries as well, but really what I came for was the characters and the setting, and I will read whatever comes out in this series because I absolutely love it. Next, I have another backlist series that was a historical fantasy that I really wanted to pick up, and I'm so glad I did. And I actually think the next one or two is supposed to maybe come out in 2024. So fingers crossed. So that is The Conductors and the Undertakers by Nicole Glover. This is the Murder and Magic series. So far there's two, but like I said, I think that two more or one more should be coming out in 2024. And this is a historical mystery fantasy set in post-Civil War America, and our main characters used to work in the Underground Railroad helping to free slaves, and now they're in Philadelphia and they kind of help their town kind of solve mysteries and figure out what's going on. So anything that's kind of like magical or complicated, they are asked to help, because a lot of times these crimes and things go unsolved because they are not helped by the local authorities. So we are following Hetty and Benji, and they have also a marriage of convenience, and they just are going about their, daily lives, and a mystery occurs with their friend, and they got to figure out what happened and are now thrown into this big wild mystery. The thing that really sells this one is the magic system, and in this one you also get expansion of the magic system, which shows how it works with different races and different cultures, and I thought that was just so interesting to see. So the implications of this magic and in this world, and being a black person who's wielding magic versus a white person who's wielding magic, and how magic would fit into a setting like this, and how an alternative history would form in this time period, I just think was really well done and interesting. I also really loved Hetty. I loved the audiobook for this too. I think the narrator, I think, was Bonnie Turpin, and how she narrated Hetty was just so well done. And again, this is a character that I feel like has so many sides to her. She's not a perfect one-dimensional character. She has flaws and she has things that she has to work on, and you see her work through those things as the story goes. And the things I also really loved about it was seeing her relationships with women and the friends in her life and how they change over time. Because I think one thing that happens a lot is we see friendships, but they kind of are in one place throughout the whole thing. And I think we see like friendships fall away and come back, or friendships that have been always strong and now they're tested in a way. And so I just think the way that she depicts female friendships in here, it was just so well done and so real to life, I think. So I really appreciate about this, and I also really liked the relationship between Hetty and Benji, and just like seeing things evolve. I haven't read a lot of marriage of convenience tropes, especially one that's like established from the beginning. So I really, really loved it. I think this is one series that I think deserves so much more hype, because I've hardly ever heard it talked about. And they are older releases. Like I think this came out in 2018? Oh no, 2021. So I just feel like this is one that deserves more hype. It's a bit of a slower mystery, but I think what it does is really makes the setting, characters, and magic come to life, and that's what I loved about it. And the mystery, while is the catalyst for a lot of things, is kind of the background element to this, but I think it was still strong. It was still a great kind of mystery, and following along as Hetty and Benji and how they work out their mysteries was really cool to see too. So new favorite series for fantasy, historical type stories. Next one is a thriller, and it's someone I know I have liked for a long time, and I finally picked up one of the last remaining newer releases of hers. And that is The Broken Girls by Simone St. James. This is another thriller that has a paranormal aspect to it. We have two timelines. One is present day, which is like 2017, 2014, and both are in Vermont, and the other one is 1950. And in 1950s, there's a girls' school for girls who like either have done something unacceptable in their homes or are orphans or are like sent away because they're illegitimate daughters and stuff like that. So it's just a school for girls that's going to teach them etiquette, and a lot of girls have a lot of trauma and stuff going on. So we're following that timeline, and we're following four girls in this school and their friendship, and one of them ends up disappearing, and so we have that thread of mystery going on. And then in the present day, we are following a woman whose sister was murdered about 20 years before, and her boyfriend of the time was arrested for it, her sister's boyfriend, but she never really believed that he was the one involved, and so she has never really let it go, and she gets wrapped up into what happened to her sister, and because her sister died at this boarding school that was closed down but on the grounds, and so we start to see the two timelines come together and how maybe they might be connected. And I really, really, really enjoyed this. I love the paranormal aspects that she weaves into the books because they're always there, and while I don't think that they really give like the mystery away, they just add something so spooky and horror-y to it that always keeps me on my toes. I also think the way that she jumps between timelines is really good and always keeps me wanting to know more. Like as soon as she stops a chapter, I have to start the next one because it ends on almost a cliffhanger every time. I wouldn't say they're cliffhangers, but they're just left in ways that you're like, but I need to know. I need to know what happens next. And yeah, it's just very like compulsively readable. I read them in like a day or two because I just, again, have to know. So I love her writing too. It's not very flowery or something, but there's something about the atmosphere that she builds when she writes this that just lends itself to the perfect like October spooky read. And so yeah, this was really good. I think my favorite is still Sundown Motel, but I would say this is runner up for favorite Simone St. James and for favorite thrillers because I really like when my thrillers have a paranormal aspect to it, and so I will just pick up anything that she writes going forward. I believe in 2024 she has a new release coming out, so I will be picking that up and maybe it'll make the top list again because I think Simone St. James made my top list last year. So next we have Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. This is a literary fiction that I picked up because a lot of people last year had it on their favorite books of the year, and so I just had to know what was going on with this, and I wanted to get more into literary fiction as well this year because it's not a genre I read a ton of, so I wanted to see what I could like in it, and this was just perfect for me. It's got very short chapters. So we're following Benny and Byron, and they have their mother who's recently passed, and they are estranged, and they are brought together to listen to these tapes that their mom made for them, and it's kind of detailing her life, and so we're getting flashbacks to things that happened in the past, and then we're getting to the present where they are listening to these tapes and then also like dealing with, you know, funeral and things like that for their mother and having to confront things that they never were confronting before because like I said, they were estranged. This is set in Jamaica in the Caribbean, and we are getting so much imagery there. I love the imagery of the water and the ocean and the swimming and the traditions that are there, like the baking of black cake is a huge part of this book as well, and just seeing that and seeing it progress all the way through where their mother like kind of goes throughout her life, and I thought that was just so well done, and the past and present weave together really well. So like when we flip back to Benny and Byron, I don't feel like I wanted to be back in the past, though I think that's the more compelling story. I do think there's enough of this like tension and wanting to know why this family has been torn apart so much when you can see just how much her mother just strived to have a family that could be safe and be loved and all this stuff. So I thought it was very powerful, very well done. The way that it was written is very storytelling like because you're getting these like tapes of her mom talking to you. When you go back in time to hear the story, it just feels like a oral story being told to you, and I really loved that about it. So it was just a beautiful, well-rounded story about a family and like what generational trauma can do to a family, and it's very hopeful and it's sad and it's got just like so many mix of emotions. So I can see why this was everyone's favorites of last year. Didn't quite make my favorite this year, but it was very, very close. Then we have a book that had been on my TBR on Goodreads for a long time, and I just hadn't picked it up, but now I'm so glad I did. So that was Alatsue by Darcy Little Badger. I read this during a 24-hour readathon, and oh my gosh, I loved it. This is about Alatsue, who is native Lipan Apache. She has the power to bring things back from the dead, so she raises like her ghost dog, Kirby, back from the dead, but she never raises people back from the dead because that's something that they do not do. And one day, her dog just starts kind of going crazy and something's wrong and she can just tell. So she ends up finding out that something's wrong with her uncle and she has to go on this quest to figure out what happened to him. And this is a mystery, but I feel like it's much more focused on the characters and just Alatsue and herself. Like, you kind of know who the culprit is the entire time. It's just about like proving it and saving her family and protecting her family. And so this has got such fun like friendship too. I really loved the way Alatsue and I think his name's Jack are their friendship and how they just have this like banter and stuff, and it's just a true friendship. It doesn't have any romantic elements to it. It does read more middle grade in my opinion, but I think it was just so wholesome, and loved Kirby. I would die for Kirby. And also it's got an interesting magic system because we have Alatsue who can raise animals and stuff from the dead, and then we have Jack whose family is, I believe, of Irish descent or of, I don't remember, but they are able to like use fairy portals because they're descended from like the fairy realm. And then we have vampires, we have werewolves, and so it's got this urban fantasy feeling to it, and it's very open like for what there is in this world, but it's just very fun. I liked all the urban fantasy elements that were woven into it. And then also I really loved the storytelling aspect of it. We have Alatsue who looks really up to her 6th great grandmother, and here's these stories of her that have been passed down, and she kind of uses them for motivation. So throughout the story you're getting flashbacks and stories of her 6th great grandmother, and the way they're told is just a very oral storytelling feeling to them, and I really loved that about it. I think it just added so much and added to the whimsy of the story and the heart of the story. And I loved how you were seeing Alatsue work through different emotions through these stories and using them as like fuel to keep going. And so I thought it was really good. I really also liked the depiction of the parents in here because while they want to protect her and stuff, they are very supportive of her and her abilities, and they aren't doubting her or anything, and they're very like much a part of the story too. They aren't just taking a back seat like a lot of YAs. It's like, where are the parents? They're not here. They were still involved very much throughout the story, and so I really appreciate that about this. And it was just a story that was so wholesome and beautiful to read, and it made me cry and made me feel so many emotions. So yeah, loved Alatsue. So happy I read it, and definitely a honorable mention of the year. So then we have The Bandit Queens by Prini Shroff. This is a debut novel set in a remote village in India, and we are following Geeta, who is a self-made woman who basically the village believes that she killed her husband, and they now are superstitious of her, and so she kind of makes her own jewelry, sells that, but people are scared of her in this community because they think that she killed her husband, and she just doesn't really tell them otherwise because it makes them leave her alone. She doesn't have to stress about getting remarried or anything like that. She just kind of can do her own thing. And one day, some of the women in the village come to her because they want her to help them kill their husbands, and this whole ridiculous thing goes down. It reminds me in some ways of a literary fiction version of like Finlay Donovan is Killing It, where we have someone who's just kind of thrown into a circumstance that they have no control over, and they kind of do, but they get themselves into trouble, and it just gets like ridiculous and over the top. But this one is darker and definitely has more commentary about like women's lives in this town in India and just what women have to do in like abusive relationships and stuff like that. And so I think there's much more commentary to this, and there are parts that are difficult to read, but there's also parts that are just so funny, and it's a very dark humor, so it's not going to work for everyone, but for me it really worked. And that's what I loved about this, is we are dealing with some hard topics and dealing with abuse and dealing with these things that would be hard to read, but the way that it's handled and the way that these women come together is just something that I really liked. So I really liked Geeta as our main character. She's kind of a curmudgeon. She doesn't want to talk to anyone. She feels very much that she's been ostracized, but we also get to see throughout the story as maybe some of her perspectives were skewed. We also get to see like her relationship with her husband, who was not a very good man, and just like seeing the progression of that. And yeah, it gets more and more ridiculous as time goes on. There's a scene in here that towards the end that just like literally had me laughing so hard because it was so ridiculous, and I loved the way the women just handled the situation. It was hilarious. So yeah, I really liked it. There was a bit of a romance in here. It was just a great debut novel, and I will definitely be picking up anything she comes out with because I thought this was just so well done. It's something that I really appreciate too, is that I like to learn about things that are difficult, but sometimes when I read something that is so just depressing and heart-wrenching, and like the characters are just really going through it, that's very hard for me to read, and I feel it very, very deeply. So to read something that can deal with those topics and have conversations about those topics while having humor and having light to it, I think really works for me as a reader, because I just can't sit in that sadness for that long. It just really is too difficult. So this is a more accessible way to like talk about some things like abuse and stuff. So I really, really appreciated what it did, and I really loved it. And that's why it is in the honorable mentions. There you go. There are my top honorable mentions of the year. I hope you enjoyed, and if you want to leave some books you really love down below. So if you want to tell me like your runner-ups for the year, and then in the favorites video, tell me what your favorites are. But if you want to leave your favorites down below, do whatever you want. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope this was interesting for you, and I can't wait for you to see my favorite books of the year, and we can discuss your favorite books of the year. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.